Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're dissecting one of the absolute most talked about dietary trends out there right now, 16-8 intermittent fasting. Look, we are definitely not here to sell you on a fad. Instead, we're keeping things completely objective. We're relying strictly on the medical texts to break down the everyday practicalities, the actual hard science, and the strict safety caveats you really need to be aware of before you decide to skip your next meal. Let's just get right into it.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with what 16-8 fasting actually is, then how to build your routine, what to eat and drink, the health benefits and evidence, and finally, those all-important side effects and risks.
Section 1. What exactly is 16-8 fasting? The 24-hour split is, well, utterly simple. You have a massive 16-hour fasting window and a much smaller 8-hour eating window. Now, I know going 16 hours without a single bite of food might sound completely daunting at first, but honestly, the easiest, most practical way to succeed here is by placing your standard sleeping hours right smack in the middle of that big 16-hour block. You're effectively fasting while you dream.
But you might be wondering, why do this at all? Beyond just a clever way of cutting calories, this regimen theorizes that we should be actively supporting our circadian rhythm, our body's internal clock. The idea is that by restricting your eating entirely to active daylight hours, you're aligning your habits with how your body naturally evolved to process energy throughout the day and night.
Moving right along to Section 2, how to actually build this routine into a busy life.
Flexibility is the real beauty of this plan. There are a few really popular 8-hour eating windows. You could do 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., or maybe 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., or even noon to 8 p.m. There's no single right answer for everyone. But, and this is absolutely crucial, once you pick your window, you need to eat regularly within those specific hours. Doing so prevents your blood sugar from wildly spiking and dipping, which keeps that excessive, super uncomfortable hunger at bay.
Let's think about how this translates into a highly relatable day-in-the-life timeline. Say you choose a noon to 8 p.m. schedule. Your fasting window kicks off at 8 p.m., right after dinner. You relax, you go to sleep around 11, you wake up at 7 a.m., and then you simply push through the morning until noon. That's when your fast ends and you finally have your first meal. Looking at it this way really demystifies the whole thing, doesn't it? You're essentially just skipping a traditional early breakfast and completely cutting out those late-night snacks.
Now, we do have to contrast the biological ideal with practical reality here. On one hand, experts will tell you that optimally, you should finish your meals in the early evening. Why? Because our metabolism naturally slows down later in the day. But let's be real for a second. With modern work hours, brutal commutes, and crazy family schedules, a 5 p.m. dinner just isn't feasible for a lot of us. So if you really can't swing that early cutoff, the absolute, pragmatic rule of thumb to follow is to avoid food for 2 to 3 hours before hitting the pillow.
Section 3. What to eat and drink. Okay, technically speaking, the 16-8 diet has 0 explicit food restrictions, but medical guidance strongly suggests you definitely shouldn't just eat whatever you want. To maintain satiety, meaning to actually feel full and satisfied during that long 16-hour stretch, you need a nutritional toolkit packed with high-fiber, nutrient-dense foods. We're talking whole grains, things like quinoa and oats. We need lean proteins ranging from poultry to lentils, and healthy fats like olive oil and avocados. This isn't just about general health, it's literally about giving your body the slow-burning fuel it needs to comfortably survive until your next eating window.
Because let's be totally honest, fasting is hard. The hangover is incredibly real, especially when you're just starting out. To get through it, you've got to hydrate heavily with calorie-free drinks. Water, unsweetened tea, black coffee, these are your best friends. Interestingly enough, stepping away from the TV actually helps too, because it directly reduces your exposure to those mouth-watering food commercials that trigger sudden cravings out of nowhere. You can also try aerobic exercise to naturally suppress your appetite, or even try meditating to just let those temporary hunger pangs pass.
On to Section 4. The health benefits and the actual evidence.
There are some very promising potential disease risk reductions associated with sticking to a 16-8 schedule. Supporters and researchers have pointed to a decreased risk of type 2 diabetes, heart conditions, rheumatoid arthritis, and general obesity. In fact, a major 2020 systematic review explicitly noted that forms of intermittent fasting show real promise for treating obesity, particularly when you pair it up with standard calorie restriction.
But to get the full impartial picture, we have to look at the conflicting evidence too. A 2023 meta-analysis gives us a really necessary reality check, indicating that intermittent fasting actually does not influence blood glucose or blood pressure. It's a vital reminder for all of us that not all medical claims circulating around the internet are universally proven.
And what about the massive online hype claiming that fasting leads to an extended lifespan? Well, listen to this very grounded quote from the National Institute on Aging. Scientists still cannot explain why fasting may lengthen lifespan. As a result, they cannot confirm the long-term safety of this practice. That is absolutely crucial to keep in mind. Long-term human studies on longevity and fasting are still incredibly limited, so we need to approach those grand claims with a very healthy dose of scientific skepticism.
Finally, Section 5. Side effects and important risks.
This brings us to perhaps the most critical part of this entire explainer, understanding the physical toll. Let's candidly normalize what might actually happen to your body when you start fasting. Common side effects include just feeling genuinely unwell, getting headaches, feeling lethargic, cranky, and even dealing with constipation. And there's a highly ironic behavioral side effect too. Extreme hunger during those 16 hours can sometimes backfire entirely, leading people to binge and overeat unhealthy junk food the second their 8-hour window opens up. It is a very real biological reaction you have to be prepared to manage.
Because of these physical tolls, there are specific groups who absolutely must avoid 16-8 fasting altogether. This firmly includes older adults due to the dangerous risks of excessive weight loss, pregnant or breastfeeding individuals, people living with type 1 diabetes, and importantly, anyone with a history of disordered eating. Furthermore, if you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, you really must seek a doctor's supervision before you even attempt to change your eating habits this drastically.
So, what does this all mean for you? It brings us to our final question. Is 16-8 actually right for your body clock? You really have to weigh your daily lifestyle, your busy schedule, and most importantly, your personal medical history against the structured facts we've just laid out. Intermittent fasting is undoubtedly a fascinating tool, but is it the right fit for your unique biology? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.